I never thought my life would come crashing down in a single evening. It started with a quiet dinner, but by the end of the night, I was standing outside my home with nothing but my crying baby in my arms. And then, the police knocked on the door. I used to think I had it all. A loving husband, a sweet baby girl, and a home that I worked hard to keep warm and welcoming. But beneath the surface, cracks had been forming for months. My mother-in-law, Sheila, moved in with us after her health took a downturn, or so she claimed. She had a way of making me feel like an outsider in my own home, but I bit my tongue for the sake of family harmony. Sheila had always been controlling, but once she moved in, it became unbearable. She criticized everything: the way I cooked, how I dressed, and even how I cared for my daughter, Mia. A proper mother would do it this way, she'd say. Or, back in my day, women knew their place. At first, I thought my husband James would defend me, but slowly I noticed him siding with her. Maybe it was guilt for leaving her alone in the past. Or maybe it was something else. Either way, I was left to fend for myself. The breaking point came on a chilly Friday evening. I had spent the day cleaning and preparing a special dinner to celebrate Mia's 6-month milestone. But as we sat down to eat, Sheila made a snide remark about how store-bought the meal tasted. I tried to brush it off, but James joined in, laughing and saying, "Maybe you're not cut out for this homemaker thing." I couldn't hold back. "Do you have any idea how much effort I put into today? Do you even appreciate me at all?" James slammed his fork down. "Don't talk to my mother like that. If you're so unhappy, maybe you should leave." "Maybe I will," I shot back, my voice trembling. "Good, take your whining and go," Sheila added, her voice cold and sharp. It escalated so fast that I barely had time to think. Before I knew it, James had packed a bag with a few of Mia's things and shoved it into my hands. "Get out," he said. "You're not welcome here anymore." I stood there, stunned, as he physically ushered me out the door. The freezing night air hit me like a slap. My baby began to cry, her tiny face red from the cold and the commotion. I begged him to let me back in, just for her sake, but he wouldn't budge. "You'll figure it out. You always do," he said, his tone void of emotion. I found myself sitting on the curb, holding Mia close to my chest to keep her warm. My mind raced. Where could I go? Who could I call? I didn't want to bother my friends, and my parents lived hours away. I felt utterly alone. And that's when the neighbours noticed. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, an elderly couple who had always been kind to us, came outside. "What's going on?" Mrs. Peterson asked, concern etched on her face. Through tears, I explained everything. Mr. Peterson's expression darkened. "That's not right. You're not staying out here." They invited me inside their warm, cosy home and handed me a cup of tea. Mrs. Peterson gently suggested, "You should call the police. This isn't just cruel, it's illegal." I hesitated. Was it really that serious? But one look at Mia, who was finally asleep in my arms, gave me the courage I needed. I dialed 911. Within 15 minutes, the police arrived. I explained the situation, my voice shaking. The officers were calm but firm. "Legally, they can't kick you out without proper notice, especially with a baby involved," one of them said. They knocked on the door and James answered, looking irritated. "What's this about?" he asked, his tone defensive. "Sir, we've been informed that you forced your wife and child out of the house. That's a violation of her legal rights," the officer stated. James tried to argue, but the law was on my side. Sheila appeared behind him, her face pale. For once, she had nothing to say. The officers escorted me back into my home and advised James and Sheila that any further attempts to remove me without due process could result in legal action. As they left, one officer looked at me and said quietly, "If you need help, don't hesitate to reach out again." That night, I slept in Mia's room, locking the door for safety. I knew this wasn't the end of the battle. The next morning, I called a lawyer to discuss my options. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting my daughter. It's been 3 months since that night. I'm staying with my parents now while I sort out custody and the divorce. The love and support I've received from my family and friends have been overwhelming. I've learned that no matter how dark things get, there's always a way out. As for James and Sheila, I've heard through the grapevine that their lives aren't as harmonious as they thought they'd be. But that's no longer my concern. My priority is Mia and building a life where she'll never have to question whether she's loved or safe. It's been 3 months since that night. I'm staying with my parents now while I sort out custody and the divorce. The love and support I've received from my family and friends have been overwhelming. I've learned that no matter how dark things get, there's always a way out. As for James and Sheila, I've heard through the grapevine that their lives aren't as harmonious as they thought they'd be. But that's no longer my concern. My priority is Mia and building a life where she'll never have to question whether she's loved or safe. If you're in a situation like mine, please know you deserve better and you are stronger than you think.